All right. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I'm Is There No One Else? And today's video, I wanted to there's no patch notes this week. There's no patch notes. There's no new changes to discuss. This is standard operating procedure for ZeniMax. Everybody that follows patch notes kind of already knew this. Week 3 is where the big changes come. So we'll have to wait till next week to see what those changes are going to be. But this video, I wanted to talk about where we've been so far, and wanted to go through some takes that have aged like fine milk. I wanted to talk about some things and just some thoughts in general about the community and everything, and all these other sorts of things. So we have to start back at the beginning, and I'm not going to touch on it too much. But yeah, it started back on July 6th, 2 weeks ago, starting when this post is going to go live. And yeah, Zos Gilliam posted this talking about how they're going to adjust weaving and basically came out with their goal. And they're going to adjust light attacks and heavy attacks. We already know this, but his point was the aim is to not harm the low end experience and target only the higher end. In doing so, we hope to reduce the difference of damage potential in a way that retains the satisfaction of learning to weave, where the impact is still felt, but to a much less degree than before. Now, the PvE community has been talking about this for a while. The damage has been very high, but this type of change isn't going to do what they're setting out accomplishing to do unless they go about making multiple different changes, right? If you're going to nerf the high end and make things like easier, more accessible, not only do you have to adjust light and heavy attacks, you also need to go in and adjust dungeon damage and healing and stuff like that in order to round things out. And it takes a complete rework of a bunch of different skill sets and abilities, and it's a lot of itemization that's already been done. I've already done a video on this. We don't have to talk about that part, but it's a lot of work, and you don't have to be a developer to see this. Okay, I'm going to provide a very simple explanation for you guys, but think about what they're trying to say here. So they're saying that their goal is if you reduce the damage on light attacks, it's not to impact the lower end. So people at the most extreme end that aren't light attacking at all, are barely light attacking, their damage isn't going to really, the difference in their damage isn't really going to be felt. People at the high end are going to see a reduction. And so the goal is to basically lower the overall ceiling, right? Well, if you think about light attack damage, basically everybody in between no light attack damage at all, no light attack weaving, and the most efficient light attack weavers in the game are going to see a decrease. If you reduce the overall damage by 50% on light attacks, and light attacks are the biggest part of your DPS, the vast majority of players that are light attack weaving in any way, shape, or form, even if you only do half of them, you're going to see a reduction in damage. Like this is pretty clear. I mean, we don't have to go into numbers. We don't have to look at combat metrics. We don't have to look at anything like that. If you're reducing something and not increasing other things, you're going to see a reduction. And so this created a huge outcry in the community, and not like a you're nerfing me sort of thing. It's just ZeniMax, like what else is there? This isn't going to accomplish what you're set out to accomplish. I talked about it a little bit on my channel. Nephis said the same thing, and I wanted to go back because sometimes our memories aren't super great, but that's what Twitter's for. Twitter's there to go back and dunk on people when they're right or when they're wrong. This is why it was created. Oh no, new computer things. Anyways, so when we look at this and we see what Nephis is talking about, is he says, responding to Brian here, Brian saying stream team members should be encouraging and assisting the community instead of joining in on the complaint fest. Skinny Cheeks, please don't start sounding like Nephis. Because Skinny Cheeks basically came out and said, this is what Skinny Cheeks said: if ZOS wants to help with accessibility, why not add something like this? This actually increases the damage for players that are unable to weave light attacks, unlike the proposed nerfs which offer no benefit to anyone, which we've already talked about. Plus a craftable one piece, it could be still worn with a mythic. And then his idea was this: increase your damage done to enemies by 12%. Your light and heavy attacks no longer deal damage, and you can still trigger enchantments and generate ultimate. So this is a way of raising the floor essentially. Like if you want the floor to be a little bit better, you can adjust health and everything on bosses, maybe you increase damage. There's other things you can do, but you don't have to completely go in and rework sets. You introduce a set that helps newer players compete that don't really know how to light attack weave. And because you do something like this, it helps them, it raises their floor. This would increase their damage by 10 to 12%. Whatever number you want to do, arbitrary, whatever. But it's a cool idea. And so he says that percent could be tweaked to whatever is reasonable, but this at least offers a solution for those that need one without affecting those that don't. This is a reasonable take, guys. Like, Skinny Cheeks is a pretty reasonable guy, but this is a very reasonable take to say, like, hey, if you want to help players that don't know the game very well, here's an option that would make it a lot easier. It's a lot less set itemization. It's a lot less standardization of skills and abilities. It's a lot less overall work for the developers that they could spend time doing other things. Because if you go back and you look at Update Combat Preview, Gilliam even comes in here and says that there's going to be potentially multiple patches of balancing things out after these changes. So we're going to have imbalance for a while. They're coming out and they're admitting, hey, like there's going to be issues with this. There's a lot less balance issues when you introduce a set like this. You just have to try and figure out how it's going to fit in with everything else you've already standardized, instead of, tearing down the table or tearing down the house and rebuilding it. So this is, like I said, this is what this comment came off of. And so Brian comes out and says, so consuming gear slot and reducing build options is a better solution than just toning down a few ego-inflated meta crunchers. Move along. Bro, it's a one-piece set. Like this takes off your trainee or whatever. Like, you can still wear a front bar, back bar, your meta front bar, back bar. This is just a one-piece set like a mythic. And like you said, you can wear it with a mythic. So it's stuff like this where it's just like, this is a reasonable option to try and help do what ZeniMax accomplishes to do. And it's, if you look at it from a number crunching perspective, like if you want to look at ego inflated meta crunchers, I mean, that's just a fallacy where that's an ad hominem, just attacking somebody instead of bringing forward or discussing this argument of the set. It has no application here, but yeah, this is just a situation where players in the community decided to attack people for in a reasonable opinion, which happens quite a bit, and that's part of being a content creator, is you have to deal with people that don't really want to discuss things with you. They'd rather like yell at you and blame you for things that really don't make any sense. And it is what it is. People watch for different reasons. Some people watch to get information. Some people watch to get angry. And far be it from me to judge who gets the most enjoyment out of what, but it is what it is. But yeah, this is the response off a pretty reasonable post. And Nephis says the same thing. Maybe there's reasons why we're all saying the same thing. I can count with one hand who's been as helpful as Skinny or the ESO communities. And yeah, you can see what he wrote. And so you can agree or disagree with what this is, but this is just a blatant attack, and it's meant to rile Feathers, and it did. Can't expect Feathers not to be riled when, that's what your goal is. So, been able to count on you for pointless noise. Yeah. So anyways, that's just what you deal with. This is just one troll, and it's not meant to be like all encompassing or anything like that. But there was a lot of stuff like this on here, and you go back and you look, and it's reasonable posts basically saying like, hey, this goal isn't setting out what you're accomplishing to set. There's other ways to go about doing this, and there's lots of smart people in this community, guys. There really is, and that was part of the reason I wanted to bring up this point, or this entire video, is Skinny Cheeks and Nephis are fantastic resources. Other people as well. These are just examples. Bra, we got this. There's plenty of great resources in the community that are fantastic for helping new players. And honestly, content creators and players that provide builds and YouTube information are invaluable for new players. Whether you have a website or whatever, it's just ZeniMax doesn't teach you these things. They don't teach you how to go through this stuff. And so your resources are people in your guilds, or they're players that spend time parsing and working through builds and showing you rotations and stuff like that. And that's what guys like Nephis and Skinny Cheeks do. You can not like them for their personalities or whatever, but you can't take away the fact that of the value that they're providing to the community in a way that the game does not. I mean, it's just a fact. So, yeah, I think it's perfectly reasonable. Like there's nothing wrong with agreeing or disagreeing with somebody's opinions, but to immediately dispute something as noise when you haven't tested stuff yourself is silly. Like I tried to explain earlier in the video, it's pretty clear, even from a guy that doesn't do much parsing, to see that this is going to impact most players. Any players that are trying to do some sort of light attack rotation are going to see a reduction with this adjustment. And that's via enchants, that's via light attack weaving. There's so many things that proc off of light attacks, different sets and stuff. All this stuff factors in. And that's the point that these guys are making. And obviously Twitter is not great for debate. You know, there's a character limit for a reason. But like even Skinny Cheeks got a lot of this as well. And so somebody blocked him even though he's just trying to provide a point. And yeah, this is just where we're at. And this was before the patch notes went live. And so we already all kind of know this. I don't want to go too much further into this, but how did it turn out? Well, last week, July 12th, this came out. And this is a post that I posted on my community wall. And it says, there seems to be this misconception that this change is meant to close the delta between light attack weavers and non-light attack weavers. This post is meant to show that the delta has increased. I did parses of each spec. It was very painful not light attacking for 4 minutes straight and grabbed the ones with the most normalized crit. So he parsed, and you can see here that he did Yondir, Pillar of Nirn, sets that basically he's just trying to show with his parses he got 70,000-ish. I think that's what it says. And so you got a roughly 70,000. First image is almost perfect dot up times with heroes and pots and no light attacks. Swap to Yondir over Reliquin to not be disingenuous while testing. So Reliquin procs off light attacks, if I remember correctly. You're not light attacking with this rotation, and so you should build in a set that allows you to do that. So then he does the next parse and he gets 100k. And that's with using Pillar of Nirn and Reliquin. And he basically says second image is a normal parse with slightly undercasted dots, but with light attacks. As you can see, even with the optimization of the non-light attack build, it's still over 30k behind. Where was this delta supposed to close? Light attack weaving should only have lost me 10 to 12k DPS. How did I lose 30k with optimization and over 40k without? None of the changes proposed as of week 1 PTS make any sense or close the gap at all. They seem to do the opposite. And so the point that he's trying to make here is good players are going to adjust to things like Maelstrom Inferno, stuff like that, light attack, scaled sets, and proc sets. He's using Reliquin and Pillar of Nirn. Sets that will proc because the proc damage has not changed. And people that don't light attack weave won't be able to take advantage of these sets to people that do. And so the gap isn't really closing because these things weren't adjusted. And so it's an interesting thing because when you look at it, this is, I wasn't expecting this because I'm not a PvE expert or anything. There's been lots of videos going through it and I don't want to get out of my realm here. But this is what happens when you attempt to standardize a bunch of different skills and abilities and damage over time effects and healing over times and a bunch of sets. The development team in a lot of ways is very, very good. But when you have hundreds of sets in the game, you're going to miss something. I don't know how many sets in the game. I think there's over 100. I could be wrong. You guys can feel free to go, but else there's actually 75 sets. And if you include the 3, like, I don't know. I think there's over 100, but I very well could be wrong there. Anyways, you look at all these different things and yeah, the week 1 PTS isn't accomplishing what they set out to accomplish. Now, I want to provide the caveat here that obviously week 1, things changed drastically. We had cast times on shields at one point. We had all these other ridiculous things, but you would think that a week 1 PTS where you're really trying to change the game this much would be closer to what you're trying to accomplish. And so that's the concern that everybody's talking about is man, like this completely changes the game. You're gonna have to go farm, you're gonna have to go make new builds, you're gonna have to go through all these sorts of things every 3 months. And for us PvPers, this is no different for us. This is literally every patch. And I know PvE is kind of the same, but like PvP builds get wiped out in an instant. I watched Sawman's video today and he talked about how he doesn't like posting build videos anymore because it dies every 3 months. And yeah, not a lot of you guys are content creators. So like you don't feel that same thing that he does. But the same thing applies to players. Like your build changes every 3 months. And so if he doesn't want to post builds because they change that drastically, players don't want to continually have to farm and find new gear to try and find the best build for them after 1, 2, 3 weeks, and then finally get a build, and then it's changing again. And then they have to go try and find another one. Like sometimes you just want to play the game. And I'm not saying like stuff shouldn't be powerful. Other stuff shouldn't be meta. It's just kind of crazy how stuff becomes obsolete. You know, like I talked about Stamsork, and Bowsork is a cool playstyle. I completely agree that Savage Werewolf needed to be adjusted, and it was absolutely broken. And Crystal Weapon, the way its conditions were really overtuned for bow classes. But you could adjust that specific spec in those ways without reducing everything else and completely gutting the class. You didn't have to go after everything. Like a 40% nerf to a spammable is insane. Like that is so insanely powerful. Why don't you change the proc condition? Like the spammable is just good on melee specs. You know what I mean? Like it didn't have to absolutely be gutted. It could have been reworked and tweaked and adjusted, but that's what ZeniMax does. That's why a lot of people come to my channel and they don't like that I talk about adjustments, because they're like, ZeniMax is going to come in with the hammer. Like, well, I mean, things do need to be adjusted. It's not my fault if they come in with the hammer. Like sometimes stuff does need to be, you know, balanced and dealt with. And that's the thing that I wanted to talk about as well. It's a perfect segue. Is you see it all the time. It happens on my channel too, but people are just really anxious to attack other players in the community, and you shouldn't attack anybody. Like I'm not trying to say like attack the developer. I'm not saying that. But why are you going after players that are building things, that are building communities, that are helping out communities and providing an opinion? Like Nefus and Skinny Cheeks didn't say anything bad, didn't say the developers don't know what they're talking about. They weren't shit talking. They weren't irrational. They were just stating like, hey, this isn't going to accomplish what you think it's going to accomplish. And so far, after a week into the PTS, they're right. It's pretty clear right now that they're right. And that's the concern that a lot of people have, is this is a huge drastic change that is going to take a lot of balancing to even out. It's going to take months to finally reach any sort of balance in PvE. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you didn't have to rework how light attacks scale to reduce light attack damage. Like you didn't have to go through and change everything, change light attack and heavy attack sets, change all these things to reduce the damage. You didn't have to go through and re-standardize dots and make, like to me, the new rotations look extremely boring. And obviously week 3 is going to bring forward a lot of different changes. But right now, the new rotations to me look boring. Like the fact that they just absolutely butchered Nightblade, and Nightblade is basically just like Templar rotation where you spam surprise attack. It's so sad to me. Like Nightblade was one of the rotations that was so fun because it took a lot of like top end skill to actually really get down the light attack weaving and everything. And now it's just like, okay, well, you apply your dots and you surprise attack spam until you get spec bow, and you don't want to apply your dots, okay, well, you lose 5k DPS, no big deal. Like that's just what it looks like to me when I'm watching these rotations. It just looks really, really boring. And yeah, you don't have to watch your buff timers, that's true. But I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if I go watch a Twitch stream of somebody doing PvE or PvP, I want to watch them do cool stuff. If you're watching somebody play a game, you want to see them do cool stuff. And if a rotation is that dull and boring, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to even do it, much less watch somebody else play it. And, whatever you want to say about Twitch streamers and content creators and whatever, it's a source of free advertising. People enjoying and playing a game does pull people into a game. It gets people back into a game. They want to go check it out. And I don't think this patch is it so far. And so I don't want to be all doom and gloom and have people say I hate content creator or I hate the developers or something like that. But it's just, these are the facts. Like people that lashed out at players in the community for voicing very real opinions, and very reasonable opinions are right so far. The ZeniMax developers have plenty of time to make adjustments. They have plenty of time to, but this is the thing, is it's like these weren't changes that people really wanted. Like, you can reduce damage without having to standardize everything. And so that's kind of the thing that I've seen so far is, there's nothing wrong with having a disagreeing opinion. Like, if you think Nephis, Skinny are overreacting, or other content creators are overreacting, or players or whatever, you're inclined to believe that. But lashing out before the patch notes come out, those sorts of things, it just doesn't make much sense, right? Like, you didn't test it either. So if somebody has an opinion like that, you're entitled to disagree with an opinion, but hold some reservation. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, and accuse somebody of being wrong and an idiot before I test something, because what if I'm wrong? What if I miss something? We're all human. We're going to miss something. You just end up looking like an idiot. You end up looking like a bad person. Like, you just end up looking like a very shitty individual when you're attacking people for really no reason at all. Especially now in hindsight, when all the takes about ZeniMax knows what they're doing here and their elitists only care about their DPS, it's completely wrong. Like the gap has widened. Lower skilled parsers are actually losing more damage. The gap has widened. Good players are actually going to complete the content, and players that were struggling before are going to struggle even more so now because of how the current sets are standardized. And so I think that's interesting. I don't know if you guys think that's interesting or not, but I think that I think in the future we need to just realize that there's a lot of very smart players in the community. Like, I'm not saying the developers aren't smart or anything like that, but it's easy to miss stuff, and that's what the community is for. And so once again, it's the same thing with the old class rep system. Like some of this stuff probably could have been avoided if you had a trusted, group of players. We could call them representatives, and these representatives could function for a specific class for PvE and PvP. We could call it could be a system. We could call it like a class rep system. And with this class rep system, before you get to the PTS, you could be like, hey, this is kind of what we're introducing, what we're thinking about. Is there anything that's glaringly apparent that's messed up before we bring it to live? Because when we not bring it to live, but when we bring it to the PTS, we want a little bit more of a finalized project, because we know that these are huge changes and it's going to take a while to standardize it. And so, yeah, that's just kind of my thought. I don't know what you guys think about it, but like a class representative system, it seems kind of groundbreaking, and it seems like it would have helped in a situation. It seems like it would have helped in a lot of previous situations and previous patch notes. And so I said it in another video, and I'll say it again, and we'll end it here, but it feels like every week one, and once again, guys, I'm you can go back and watch all the other PTS patch notes. I'm the person that says, hey, don't overreact to week 1 and week 2 of the patch notes, because things always get toned and escalated back. But at the same time, it feels like more often than not, every week 1 PTS patch notes is just ZeniMax trying to drive the game off a cliff. And for 2 weeks, players basically say, hey, you shouldn't drive this game off the cliff because we have this, this, and this. And then we have no discussion, nothing saying, hey, we're looking at this. It's just, we hear your feedback, we will have new patch notes. And you're just kind of left in the dark for 2 weeks about what's going on. And so we have to wait 2 weeks just wondering, like, hey, week 3 are the big changes. After week 3, not much happens. So if it doesn't come week 3, we're driving off the cliff. So I guess we wait till Monday. So yeah, I know a lot of PvEers are more upset than PvP. PvP at this point, it's just like, don't break our game. But it kind of sucks to see. It kind of sucks to see because I really do hope PvE gets a win here. I really do. I really hope that people that are voicing their opinion and testing stuff get their voices heard and get quality changes, and it pushes the game towards a way that they would like to see it, because it just gives a small glimmer of hope for PvP community to hopefully get the same. I know that's like a glass, like not even half full, but glass full thought, but at least there's some hope there that maybe in the future stuff like this just won't happen, so those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on the community and everything. But yeah, be kind to each other. You can have disagreeing opinions, but we don't have to be vicious. It's a video game. Just remember, we're all playing a video game. We're all entitled to opinions, and even if we disagree, we're still people. So yeah, gonna end it here. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.